What's going on? So this script here, it's a relatively simple script, but I suppose it introduces a couple coding principles that we may not have come across yet. So I'm going to change the format for this video. I'm going to start by doing a bit of a run through of the test mockup script. I usually do like a little quick run through before filming the video, just so that I don't stutter too much. But yeah, maybe we'll run through this because I feel like starting with a blank page and just doing comments might get a little bit too abstract. Now it isn't the complete script in that I didn't implement any of these prompts. They're just sort of hard set values. But the idea is that we have these three modes, and the user, when they run the script, they would select the mode by typing either 1, 2, or 3, or maybe F, R, and S. Maybe that's a good way to do it. Forwards, reverse, shuffle, or forwards, backwards, shuffle, whatever you think is best. Now this script is similar to a script that we've already done, which is it spaces the items out with a specified gap, a consistent gap at the end of each item. But the difference is you can choose between forward, reverse, and shuffle mode. I really like this script when doing sound design, because if you're working with lots of different Foley pieces and you want to create different combinations, it's really great to just take the whole row of 20 items, duplicate it, shuffle them all, and then you've got all these doubles. Yeah, I find this really, really useful. And reversing is just fantastic too. That instantly shuffles as well, to an extent. So you've got these three modes, and take note of how I've defined the modes here. It's a table. There's key strings for the different mode types, and then the value of those mode types is just a number. Now that might seem a little bit weird. I mean, it could be anything really. It doesn't have to be a number. We could use the word forwards and reverse. They could be the values, because it all depends on how it's implemented in the code. So if we come down here, so this is where we act on the mode type, and there's a function for forwards, a function reverse, etc. So yeah, at this point we check what the active mode is, and all we're doing is we're comparing the active mode to see if it matches the value of any of the predefined mode options, which is in this modes table here. I'm just going to go back to how it was. So yeah, so they're the modes, and this is the mode that we're currently on. And like I mentioned, this should be a prompt, and based on the user input, it gives you a mode. I'm just hard setting it to shuffle here. And what I mean by hard setting it to shuffle is I'm essentially saying mode equals 3, because 3 is the same as modes.shuffle. Now I could have just written mode equals 3, but this is more readable. I'm sure you would agree. So yeah, that's the same as this, essentially, under the hood. And likewise, if we're doing reverse, we're doing mode equals modes.reverse, which is the same as mode equals 2, because 2 is the same as modes.reverse. So that's how I've set that up. Cool. So we prompt for a specified gap. Now this is a new concept here. We haven't really done things like this before, but how this works is we declare an empty table called items, And then when we're looking through all the selected items that we have, we are storing the item along with other information about it as a table entry. So once we go through all these loops, let's say you have 10 items selected. When all said and done, this items table at this point down here, this will be a table with 10 values in it. And each value will look like this. Item equals item, pos equals start pos, len equals length, end pos equals end pos. So it's a little bit confusing. Let me see if I can do this to make it a little bit clearer what's going on. So what I'm doing here, just putting the apostrophe in square bracket, this doesn't change the functionality of it at all. It's sort of unnecessary actually, but I'm just doing it to illustrate something. So yeah, we've got our items table. Each entry in the table is a table itself. We've talked about this in a previous video. You can have a table where all the entries are themselves tables. Tables within tables is the idea here. Now each entry, also a table, each entry has these items in it, these entries in it. The first is, the key is the string item, and the value is the media item data type, the reference to that item, okay? The reason why I was spelling that out, because it is a little bit confusing, you know, item equals item. What does that mean? But what it does mean is this is a key, which is a string, and the string is item. But then the value, the right-hand side of the equal sign, this is a reference to the media item. You know, we could, I suppose we could make it a little bit clearer by making them different. Maybe that's clearer. So media item is the reference to the data type media item. Item is a string named item. Okay. Likewise, pos is a string, that's the key, and the value is the number, which is the return function of this get position function, which is here. Length is a string, len is a string, length is a number, it's the return of this function, and then end pos is this calculation here. So hopefully that makes sense. Let's get rid of that. Okay, so we build our table of items. So when we're down here, we have a fully built table with all the items referenced with data about them, start position, end position, etc. And then what we do with that is we can shuffle the order in different ways. Either make sure it's in forwards order, which is this function here, reverse order, or we could shuffle. And then notice with the shuffle one, we shuffle and then put it in forwards order. I'll explain that in a little bit. So let's look at these now. So that is defined up here. It's a function that I've made. So Lua has this table.sort function. So you pass in the table that you want to sort, and then you can tell it rules by, how do you want to sort it? Like by what metric are you sorting this table? And this is one way to define it. You define it with a function itself. So this whole thing is a function in the same way that this whole thing is a function. Because remember, under certain circumstances, the compiler will ignore the kid screaming outside. The compiler will ignore character returns and spaces. So what I just did here by putting it all on one line, that actually doesn't change the functionality of the function at all. This will work just the same. The reason why we put them on their different lines is because it makes it a bit more readable, like that. So yeah, this is a self-contained function as an argument. So this table.sort function has two arguments. The first argument is the table that you want to sort, and the second argument is the rule by which you are going to sort. And the rule that we're going to sort by is for two entries in the table, we look at the pos, the .pos value. So to remind ourselves what that is, we look down to where we're actually building these things. And the .pos is this, which is the start pos, okay? So for every two items in the items table, we're looking at the .pos of the first one and the .pos of the second one. And we're looking at which is smaller. And it's going to sort it in that way. It's going to sort it from smallest to biggest. In other words, from left to right along the timeline. Now, yep, so that's the sort forwards. So that makes, once we've got that makes the reverse very easy because it's just the opposite. It's putting the bigger one before the smaller one, so it's sorting biggest to smallest. So in reverse order. So that's very cool. Now shuffle items is a little bit different. That doesn't use a sort, or not yet anyway. What we're doing here is we get a reference to two items at random. This time we're not going through and sorting one by one. We're just picking any two items at random that are within this table. And we make sure we do this process more times than there are items in the table. So that's what this is doing here. So if we've got 10 items selected, it'll do this shuffle, this swapping thing 30 times. Now, that doesn't guarantee that every single item will get moved. There's no guarantee of that. You would expect that it would because you're doing it 3 times as many as there are items. But even if it doesn't move them all, it's still going to shuffle them sufficiently in my mind. Cool, so we pick 2 items from the list at random, and we do that by doing this. So remember, you can access one of the entries like this. You know, that's the name of our table. And if we do this, that is the 5th item in the table, the 5th entry in the table, right? And if you do this, that's the 7th item in the table. So what we're doing is we're picking a random number between 1 and however many items there are in the table. And it can include 1 or the maximum number. So picking a random number within that range, and then another random number within that range. And those are our 2 items. And then we just swap the values. Now the way you do that is with this syntax here. So item A pos, comma, item B pos equals item B, comma, item A. So what that's going to do is this value is going to be put on here, and this value is going to be put on here. But instantaneously, you know, you don't end up with the same value on both. Get my drawing tool. So this value pops onto here, this value pops onto here at the same time, right? So in other words, they shuffle. Cool, and so we shuffle all those, and then you remember that when we're doing this shuffle, we do that shuffle stuff, and then we do the same as this. We sort them in forwards order. Now, just a quick note about how this is going to work when you've got function followed by a function. Maybe this was obvious to you, maybe it wasn't. But how this works is when you get to this bit of the code, it goes to here. That tells the system to jump over to where those instructions are defined. So it goes through all this stuff, and only when it gets to the end of that does it move on to the next line. Maybe that was obvious to you, maybe it wasn't, but just in case you weren't sure how that works, that is how that works. So this has to be fully finished before we enter this one. Just a side note there. Cool. So regardless of which mode we had, it's going to do one of those things. And then we actually do the placing of the items depending on how we sorted it and also what the specified gap is. So remember, that's another one of the features of this script. I haven't implemented it yet, but we prompt the user for the gap. I'm just hard setting it to 1 second at the moment. Oops, let's just change it to 0.5. And how we doing that? I mean, we've done this in a previous video actually. Might have been slightly different though. So we keep track of what the next position should be, and it starts off as the leftmost item position. So yeah, when we loop through all of our items in our items table, we extract out probably don't need to do that step actually. Probably just do that there. Maybe that's easier to read. So the new pos will be whatever the next pos was. And we set, so remember how this works when you're doing a 4 pairs loop. This is already in order, right? Because we sorted it in various ways up here. So when you do a 4 IV in iPairs, remember these can be anything. They don't have to be necessarily those letters. We're declaring 2 new variables each time we run around the loop. And V refers to this. It's the entry, right? So if we want to get a reference to the media item from that, it'll be v.item. And likewise, when we want to get the length from it, it's v.len. That's how we access information within that table entry. So we set the item position, the reference to the media item, the new pos, which we've already calculated. That true refers to refresh UI. I think we talked about that in a previous video. Cool. And then we store a reference to the next position for use in the next time we run around the loop. So that's going to be the position that we just moved the item to, plus its length, because we've stored each item's length here, plus its length, plus the specified gap. Now, if you want to run the script so that all the items are sort of touching back to back, you would just make specified gap 0. So it's not a requirement that there is a gap necessarily. All right, so we got a demo here.
1, 2, 3.
Just the numbers.
5.
Counting in order. All right, so what should we try first? Let's do reverse. Already on a reverse. Cool. Let's do reverse. There we go.
10, 9, 8, 7.
Cool. And let's try. No, well, let's reverse it again, because that'll put it back in order. So 1, 2, 3, 4 again.
1, 2.
Cool. And now shuffle.
9, 1, 4, 2, 5, 7.
Cool. Sufficiently shuffled. I just Control Z just then.
1, 2,
So it's back in order. And let's just shuffle once more.
8, 1, 9, 2.
Nice one. Cool. All right. So I guess that's overview and introduction to the next video, which will be starting from scratch and building this thing. So I'll see you there.